Hi, good to see you. For a long time, she had suffered from hypertension and had even suffered a heart attack once and was incapacitated. The doctors said she had to have heart surgery to change a valve. But where would she get the money to do it? She was not happy with her life, but her dream was to see her daughter rich and happy all her life. Jimena barely made ends meet and clung to any part-time job just to have enough money for food and services. Towards the end of her life, her health completely deteriorated. Of course not. She wanted Julia to repeat her unfortunate fate after all. Once Jimena had suffered a lot for a great and pure love in her youth, she had been left without a frivolous fiancé and with a huge belly completely alone. Her ideal image of happiness is her daughter living in a luxury and her husband being a businessman so they could die in peace. The woman was scandalized when she saw the homeless man next to her daughter and thought, why did he bring him home dirty clothes, unwashed head, the same messy his face was full of. Feelings from surprise to indignation, but Julio tried not to notice by calmly introducing the unknown mother. I present to you my fiancé Miguel. This is my fiancé Miguel. He and I are going to live here now. He has nowhere to live. You don't care, right? Turning towards him, man, the girl said happily. Well, what are you doing standing there? Come in. Don't be shy. Make yourself at home, the mother murmured angrily. But don't forget that you are a guest. My God, my daughter, when are you going to stop collecting the garbage? It is a decent apartment, not a homeless shelter. The woman sighed sadly and stooped to her room. Julia cooked potatoes and mushrooms, and the young people had a hearty dinner. Then she took Miguel to the bathroom. She put his dirty clothes in the washing machine and accompanied him to his room. This is where you will sleep, my side on the floor now. I will make you a bed. Miguel enjoyed the hot shower, the clean sheets, and thought to himself, what a beauty it is. So when you start to appreciate the simple human pleasures, who was going to tell me I would have? He looked gratefully at Julia before going to bed with sincerity. Thank you, with all his heart. Good evening. He quickly got used to being a guest, and the girl's kindness played a positive role. Furthermore, Julia was not ugly. She was smiling and pleasant. The young people got along well. They spent a lot of time talking. Miguel tried to help at home. He fixed the laundry ropes on the balcony that had fallen down a while ago. He tightened the kitchen cabinets and fixed the loose chair. Now Julia was glad to be back home from work because she knew that Miguel was waiting for her there. The feelings between them broke out unexpectedly that night. As usual, they were watching a television program and chatting about everything. Suddenly, Julia winced in pain and screamed. A worried Miguel ran towards her. Julia, what? Is something wrong with you? Something hurts. What is it? The girl grabbed onto her leg. I have a cramp. It must have been the work. It hurts. Miguel began to gently and delicately knead her foot, then the other, then the shins. I felt so well. The pain disappeared immediately and the cramp released her. The man began to move slowly higher and higher. He got closer to Julia and began to kiss her passionately and expertly. The girl tried to overcome herself and whispered, Miguel, what are you doing? We are not pretending to be the couple enough. He already answered the name in a low voice without stopping, gently caressing her. I also thought it was all a game, but I really fell in love. Julia, I want you so much. You are the best. I have never met anyone like you. If you don't mind, tell me and I'll go right away. But it was too late. Julia had already completely lost her mind, and they both plunged into the abyss of passion without realizing anything around them. The young people were very happy. Even their mother's eternal discontent did not irritate them at all. Miguel, he was so in love with Julia that he couldn't imagine his life without her, and Julia realized that she had found her happiness. Here is true love. I feel very good about him. He tried to convince his mother that Miguel was the man suitable to make her happy, but her mother was relentless. And what are you doing? What future do you have with him? He is a homeless man without papers, without a job, with nothing. What do you think that in a week he will not be here? Even though Miguel helped his mother with everything, he took care of her. He did everything in the house. The woman continued to hate him every time she tried to say something unpleasant to offend him in some way. When Miguel didn't leave after a week, the pensioner decided to go all out while Julia was at work. He told it directly and angrily to Miguel. I'm warning you, fiancé, Julia is an emotional girl, and she does everything that comes into her head. She's just having fun with you. She actually has a fiancé, only she's traveling abroad. When she gets back, she'll kill them both. Get out of here immediately. If you want, I will live if I don't call Julia's fiancé today and tell him everything about you. The mother knew that she carried a sin in her soul by deceiving her daughter and her lover in such a black way. but the desire to see her daughter with a man prevailed. Rich man took the serious words. He looked at the woman with eyes full of pain and suffering. Then he covered his face with his hands and cried in silence. He did not want to believe what his mother had told him. Could Julia have been so cruel to him when she had assured him so much of her love? Could have betrayed him? It could be his whole body felt like petrified. His legs didn't want. Julia, aged 60, returned home in a bad mood. She had been working as a nurse in the clinic for a month and could not get used to the atmosphere of the ward. The work itself was monotonous, the same routine every day. The illness and human suffering did not contribute to her joy, and his colleagues were unpleasant people with endless talk about money, gifts, expensive things, and the human soul. Morality, compassion, understanding were never the problem. Julia hurried back home because it was late. She stayed at work longer than usual, dreaming that very soon she would find a job she liked and join a good team. Outside, it was late autumn, a gloomy time of year. The same melancholy was haunting her mind. The last bus left a long time ago, and Julia had to take the subway to return home. Going down the subway stairs, she saw a thin young man in dirty and threadbare clothes standing against the wall with a trembling hand extended, asking the passers-by a little money. Probably a homeless man, thought the girl herself. Had grown up in a family poor, without a father. Her mother had 3 jobs to make sure they lived too, like the others. Therefore, the man aroused sincere sympathy, all the more so as his face was pleasant with regular features. Julia took a few steps towards the man, and when she got closer, she could see his face better. For a moment, she thought she had run into her ex-boyfriend, Antonio, who she really liked. They had gone out for a while. A long time, but they had broken up in a very painful way. Antonio shouted Julia to the man. He seemed to look up, but he immediately lowered it. Exactly, he is just ashamed to be here. And in this way, he thought the girl had been waiting for a meeting the whole time. They had not seen each other, and now it was happening. Julia wanted Antonio, but her mother decided otherwise. Constant talk about how he was not suitable for endless reproaches that the man was supposedly poor, unpromising, and Antonio left, mortally offended. Everyone, what a meeting, Antonio. I recognized you, and I'm very happy to see you. Julia, young lady, stammered. Unfortunately, I'm Miguel. The man barely managed to get out and turned around. Julia looked at him and asked herself, what if I took him home to annoy his mother and say that he is her fiancé and that now he will live with them? Perhaps this way he would stop interfering in her love life and present the right candidates. She thought the idea was crazy, of course, and Julia was already imagining the horrible scandal that it would cause at home, but for some reason today he was in such a bad mood that he really wanted to carry it out. By all means, he bought coffee and cookies and gave them to the homeless man. He thanked him, embarrassed, and began to eat greedily. Julia asked him something. Miguel, how did you get here? Why don't you work where your house was not in? Embarrassed, answered, yes, it happened. I don't want to tell you. My mother drank. My stepfather brought me here. He beat me a lot, and then they kicked me out, so I'm wandering around. I don't have papers, and without them I can't find a job. I sleep where I can, in the train station or in a heating tube like everyone else. Julia felt unspeakable compassion for the poor man who had been left with nothing. She immediately said the first thing that came to her mind. Come with me. I will give you the closure of the loom, and you will sleep alone. One condition: I tell my mother that you are my fiancé, otherwise she won't let me in, and you play along with me. You agree? And if you don't like it, or you get bored, you can leave at any time. It's not that no one is stopping you. Help me. I'm really fed up with my mother. She doesn't let me live in peace. Meet whoever she knows. Everyone is not like her. She keeps dreaming that she will bring home a millionaire on a white horse. The stranger hesitated for a moment and then said, and to spite her, you decided to bring a tramp? Well, it's not a great idea, to be honest. Thanks for the offer. You have a good heart, you know. I think I'll take it. I'm freezing at the intersection. To tell the truth, at least I'll warm up. The girl perked up, and everything around her lit up. She was a person emotional that I lived with feelings. I had never dreamed of a lucrative marriage or a rich boyfriend, and I believed that this was not the main thing among young people. Love and mutual understanding must come first, and if this is my destiny, so I will tell my mother directly who is my fiancé. And then what will happen? The girl resolutely took the astonished vagabond under her arm and headed toward her future happiness before an astonished audience. It must be said that Julia's mother did not receive her daughter and the stranger with the welcome that I was waiting for. To move, he could barely move. and he staggered away without looking back. That day, Julia, luckily, had to stay to work at the hospital because her shift. It was in the afternoon, but at night they brought in a year-old boy with severe burns, and they asked him to stay until the morning. Julia called home and told him that she was going to be delayed for hours. Her mother didn't tell her anything about it. Throwing the urchin out on the contrary, he rubbed his hands happily, realizing that after hours he would be somewhere far away. Miguel wished he hadn't left and waited for Julia to talk to her personally. The heavy worries were literally sizzling his soul. She was wondering how could this have happened to her, but then her self-esteem kicked in and she decided, I'll go, it won't bother me or her, that they can live as they want. What am I to them? I'm just a bum. When Julia finally got home and she didn't find Miguel there, she knew right away. She started yelling at her mother. Mom, why do I know that you fought? You do it on purpose. Master Miguel, do you understand? Where can I find him now? The mother started to defend herself. Because you always blamed me. All of your vagabond left on his own. I didn't touch him. No, I will cry for him personally. You fell in love, and you will fall out of love. Maybe after the third time you will find a decent fiancé. Stop bringing all kinds of garbage here. Julia stood like a stone. She knew that Miguel couldn't leave. Just like that, everything was going well. I'm Josue. I can already imagine what my mother said about me, where I'm going to find Miguel now. I can't do it without him. In the hope of finding Miguel again and explaining everything to him, Julia turned around from the doorway and ran towards the passage where they had first met. She turned her head and asked the other homeless people and street vendors, but they only shrugged. It had been a long time since they had seen the man around. The girl ran around the outskirts for more than an hour, wondering if Miguel would not have gone far yet and would be waiting for her somewhere nearby, but it was all in vain. The man had suddenly disappeared. She also felt very hurt because he had done that. Why didn't he wait for her and talk to her? He duly said that he loved her, but he left her forever. He believed all that nonsense, so he was just using her. Outside it was pouring rain, and the gusts of wind ripped the last leaves off the tree, but Julia didn't notice anything. She wandered around, unable to distinguish the road, soaked to the core, and I sobbed uncontrollably. Maybe my mother is right, and I really am a kind of stupid, imperfect person. Maybe I should tell the person with love who needs it when it makes you cry. You can't trust anyone. In the end, Julia was cold. She was soaked and very sick for 3 weeks. She had a high fever. As soon as she was alive in her delirium, she kept shouting Miguel's name to call him, to look for him. Julia fell into a deep depression. She was going to work like a robot. When she got home, he immediately locked himself in his room and sobbed until the morning. He didn't eat well, so he lost a lot of weight. After a month, he started vomiting a lot. He literally vomited inside. Julia was a medical professional, and she quickly realized that she was pregnant. The situation was a nightmare. The baby's father was a homeless man who had fled from her in an unknown direction. Her mother can barely tolerate her, and if she finds out about the pregnancy, she will not allow her to live at all. He will mistreat her. What will she be able to do? How to continue living? And about all because Julia didn't know. Now she went every day in the morning and afternoon to the same intersection where there is work, in the hope of seeing Miguel there again. Once she even thought she recognized him from behind, happily shouting, Miguel, my love, I've finally seen you. Found, but a complete stranger turned to her and responded, surprised, I'm not Miguel, you're wrong. Music. Desperate, Julia decided to do something irreparable. She didn't see any other way out with a child under her heart, and so all the problems will be solved in one fell swoop. Eyes that don't see, a heart that doesn't feel. She went to the gynecologist. They did the necessary tests. They let her enter without waiting in line as a nurse when she was already lying in the chair, and a strict doctor, who evidently looked at her with judgment, took out all the instruments necessary. Suddenly a terrible thought assailed him. What am I doing? I'm going to kill Miguel's baby. It's part of him, his blood and his flesh. This baby will remind me of my most beloved person all my life. How am I supposed to live? That's the meaning. From life to hell with all of them, the mother, Miguel himself, and the evil colleagues who openly mocked her. I don't care. I will give birth to him and raise him myself against all odds. Julia abruptly pushed the stunned doctor away, got up from the chair and said, What? I'm sorry, I've changed my mind. The gynecologist breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God. Julia came home after work, and the smell of fried fish immediately hit her nose. She barely had time to cover her mouth with her hand and run to the bathroom. She spent half an hour hunched over. On the toilet, the alarmed mother listened under the door, suspecting the worst. She shouted, Daughter, you are sick, you are poisoned. Open the door. It's not what I think, it's true. Finally, Julia felt better and exhausted. She went out into the hallway. Her mother remained silent, looking at her reproachfully, waiting for an explanation. The tired woman shouted angrily in her mother's face. "Yes, mother, I'm pregnant. Imagine how stupid, Miguel, and you kicked him out. Now your grandson will never know who his father is. I hope you're happy. It's not what you wanted." "No, I'm going to contribute. You don't even have to mention it. Leave me alone, I need to rest," and ran to the room sobbing. Jimena grabbed her heart and went to the kitchen to take some sedative pills. She mentally scolded her daughter. "What a fool she is, playing at love, repeating my stupid destiny, at least kill me, steps on the same rake, and now what, to engender poverty again? As soon as I raised her, I thought I would have some peace in my old age, and now we are going to raise a grandson orphaned by father." Since that day, Julia and her mother had almost, she stopped talking to herself, and she closed herself off and didn't leave her room. She tried not to cry when it was absolutely impossible. She started caressing his belly and softly singing him a lullaby or talking to the baby. Strange as it may seem, this helped, and he began to calm down and go to sleep. Jimena regretted 1,000 times for having lied about her daughter and for having kicked Miguel out. He really wasn't a bad man, not a provider. He was a good administrator, and he loved Julia very much. You could see it at first glance. So he would have gotten his papers and a job and would be a good husband and father for my daughter. And how ashamed I am to say that my daughter is pregnant by a homeless man who ran away somewhere. Oh, the neighbors will laugh. It was scary to look at Julia. She was constantly vomiting. She couldn't eat almost anything at work. She jokes and mockery say did a baby was brought in a hymn, and that the father himself does not know. The former nurses were especially creative. They despised and savored all the details. They spread rumors and said very unpleasant things about Julia. The only person who treated her well was that gynecologist, Ramon Reyes, who always encouraged her. And Julia reassured her, unable to bear the gossip about her. Sometimes she burst into tears in the middle of the office. "Okay, or something to eat. I always have something for my personal use." Julia, you are now in a position in which you react very emotionally to everything. And that is normal. It is due to the hormones. You should try to forget about everything. Take more walks. Talk to the baby. I assure you that he hears it and feels it all. You cry and he feels bad. There you laugh, and he calms down in the womb. Believe me, when the baby is born, all those problems that now seem unsolvable to you will take a back seat. You will enjoy motherhood and the rest. It's not that important. Your situation is not easy, of course, but I want you to know that if you have nowhere to go or need help, you can always call me. I will help no matter what happens. You have my phone number. After every visit to the doctor, Julia wanted to live like this again. 2 more months passed. Not a day or night went by without her thinking about Miguel. No matter how angry she was with him, she still loved him deeply. When she closed her eyes, her hands, her lips, her smile, she scolded herself. Throw it away. Forget it. What? Idiot, he has left you, he is gone, and he doesn't remember. He doesn't even care if he really loved you. Like, I would have found you, I would have told you about him, and you have been crying for months. What did you want? You found him at the crosswalk, you held his hand, and now you have to deal with it. Admit it, you are a single mother. And what, how many of us are single? My mother raised me, no, and I can manage. Jimena knew that until she apologized to her daughter and told her the truth. Her relationship would not work. She herself was fed up with everything that Julia had. She had been quiet as a fish since that last conversation. She didn't react to anything. If she tried to argue, her daughter would go silently to her room or directly outside. The woman felt intensely guilty. She felt very sad and distressed. My God, how can I get to my daughter? I can apologize. They weren't strangers, right? Everything was falling apart. She didn't want to do anything. She dreamed of hugging her stupid daughter, kissing her on the forehead, telling her that she wasn't angry anymore, that he would help her, that he wouldn't abandon her. Everything was decided on. By chance, it was a day off, so Julia didn't want to think about Miguel. She decided to clean the room. She started washing the curtains and washing the windows. When the woman was washing the window, her mother looked into her room as she passed by. She thought her daughter was trying to jump and commit suicide. And yet they lived on the 5th floor. Without realizing it, the woman ran towards her. In a second, she abruptly tore her daughter off the windowsill. She hugged her and screamed, Julia, honey, don't do it, don't jump. I'm begging you, forgive me. I'm an old fool, it's my fault. I told you that your Miguel left. I told him that you had a fiancé and that you were with him to have fun so that you wouldn't get bored. I was trying to do what I thought was best. I thought I was doing the right thing. I see that your silly girl is repeating my destiny alone now. Watching your unbearable suffering, I realize what I have done. I have left my grandson without a father. I am not angry with you. I love you. It's okay. We will create your baby together. Don't do anything to yourself. You want me to help you find Miguel. Forgive him. Julia looked at her mother, stunned with tears falling down his cheeks. Mom, what are you doing? I wasn't going to jump. I was washing the windows, but I'm glad he confessed. So you told the truth. You know, I really hated you a lot at first, and you have to admit that I did, but then I realized that if Miguel, I really loved him as much as I did, he would find a way to see me, talk to me, and fix things, and since he agreed to everything and left calmly forever, good luck to him. So don't beat yourself up. Thank you for the support, at least now I will have some peace at home. Mother and daughter hugged each other for the first time in a long time and cried, but they were tears of relief and liberation. The weight of resentment, the anger, the incomprehension had dissipated in both of them. It even seemed like she was breathing better. Jimena went to put the kettle on. Julia crunched a pickle while she drank sweet tea. The pensioner remembered that when she was pregnant with her daughter, she used to chew chalk wherever she found it. They both laughed. Now Jimena was preparing to give birth to Julia. She took out an old and dusty sewing machine from her youth. She looked in her trunk for a piece of soft ballet cloth and began to remember her youth. In 1 week, my mother had made diapers of dresses and hats. She washed and ironed them and sharpened them neatly. Jewel arrived from her shift and sat down. She was shocked. She timidly took a small vest in her hands. She unwrapped it and tears came to her eyes. Mommy, thank you. How beautiful it is that the baby will perhaps be as small as a doll. I can't believe it. Mom sighed and said, yes, my daughter, we will take turns. Night at the beginning. It will be hard, but then we will name ourselves. The stroller and the crib can be bought secondhand. You can look on the website. You will receive enough maternity pay for the first time, and then maybe I will be with my grandson, and you will find a part-time job, or let's go to work first. Don't worry, we'll manage. Julia felt much better mentally. Now she knew that her mother was with her. She supported her. She could tell her what was bothering her, what worried her, and yet, as soon as night came, Julia became sad, melancholic. Tears welled up and pressed. She remembered how she and Miguel had sat curled up on the couch watching a soap opera about the police, and then they had slept together, curled up against each other. She gently caressed his shoulders, her hair. She whispered words of love to Miguel. How it could be where you are now. Maybe you wander the world and have long forgotten how you could have believed you. You will never know that you are going to have a child. These thoughts went round and round in my head, tearing my soul to pieces, but soon something happened that, as she saw the whole town, turned Julia's life upside down that day. She had had a premonition all morning. Something was spinning in her soul. Her heart was shaking all the time. She was mixing everything in the shift, and she couldn't understand what was happening. The tests almost confused the patient, and then they almost took the wrong patient to x-ray. The head nurse scolded Julia all day. What's wrong with you? Get a grip. After all, what will happen before delivery if you're already in the clouds? Think about work. When Julia returned home from her shift, a caravan of several luxury black limousines stopped in front of the house on display. She was watering the strawberry flowers, and she got a big surprise look. Daughter, what important people have come to see someone. I have only seen cars like that in the movies. I wonder who it is, for I don't think any rich man lives in our house. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Surprised Ximena went to open the door. On the threshold, there were 3 bodyguards and a respectable young man and well-dressed. He smiled and asked, good afternoon, Ximena. Is Julia? Can I come in? The bewildered woman nodded and quietly let the important visitors in. The visitors entered the hall and Julia came out to meet them. Suddenly, this young and elegant man ran towards her and met her. He threw himself into his arms. He was very excited. Hello, my love. Here I am. Miguel, you are happy. I have returned. Surprise of the man. Julia pushed him away and Miguel shouted, why did he decide to come back? Suddenly, you abandoned me so easily, believing what my mother said. Tramp, I'm he. Son of the millionaire Crespo, you will have heard of him. We have 2 airlines abroad. Anyway, I grew up, of course, in luxury and wealth. I went to an elite public school. Then I graduated from the University of Economics in England. I thought I had all the skills. Life ahead that was wonderful, incredible. I felt like I was wearing rose-colored glasses. and suddenly I am losing my mother, and this despite the fact that her health was very carefully monitored, the best clinics were examined, and she lived a completely healthy lifestyle. Can you imagine? She got out of her car and headed to the supermarket and was run over to death right there by a drunk driver. It was a terrible shame for our entire family. I vaguely remember the funeral. It seemed like nothing was wrong with me at first, Dad. I was very saddened. He and I had bonded in some way. It was easier to go through such a grief together. But my father surprised me when 6 months after my mother's death, he brought to our house that hateful stepmother Camila. I didn't get along with her from the beginning. She had the audacity to behave in our house, throwing away my mother's things, taking her photo even though I had expressly forbidden it. The result was a wild scandal. I thought my father would support me, but he didn't know. He took the side of that scum and gave me a condition. Either I accepted it or I left. It was unheard of to throw his own son out of the house for a hateful woman. I couldn't communicate with my father. It was as if he couldn't hear me. It was as if Camila had put a spell on him. So I got angry and I ran away from home, but it turned out that I was not at all adapted to the street life I had seen before. A luxurious life, high society, everything in abundance. I had no idea that people could starve to death, look for food in the dump, or sleep in the heating pipes. For me were drunks and the scum of society. I was so scared I went from one place to another, stupid. And if you want, I took my papers from home. I realized then, after having communicated with many homeless, that half of them were ordinary people, often educated and cultured, with a destiny of cripples. Meeting Julia was the most brilliant episode of my vagabundo life. When Meko ran angrily to the train station, I got on a train that passed through there, and I went miles away. I was there begging about the station as usual when suddenly my father's caravan picked me up. Right there it turned out that Dad got very sick. He caught a cold and went to the hospital with pneumonia. The doctors, they could hardly save him. So his loving figure immediately began to distribute millions behind his back, rubbing his hands. He never visited him in the hospital. Then when my father remembered that he had a son, he felt ashamed and decided to apologize. We had lived together well all the time before Camila arrived, and we understood each other. Anyway, my father and I reconciled. Now I am his representative. I told my father about you. Julia doesn't mind that we see each other, so I came to look for you. Get ready, let's go to me house in the capital. I will introduce you to my father. Julia was sitting with the Lord, frowning and forth silence. Then he said, I'm not going anywhere, Miguel. First, my mother is sick, and I won't leave her for a long time. And second, I'm pregnant. What do you think of the man's face? It changed. How pregnant? I don't understand. Who? Julia couldn't stand it anymore. She slapped him and yelled at him as an idiot of my fiancé, who was supposedly with me. That's not what you're implying, so you think I'm lying around? I go to the hell, then leave with your millions. I hate you. Julia ran to her room, crying. A furious Miguel also jumped out, and what a goodbye. Hysterical girl. The entire entourage left. Camila clutched her heart incessantly, realizing that all this cooling had exploded precisely because of her stupid words. It was she who sowed doubt in Miguel's mind. How could she do it right? They could see that they loved each other, but they argued as if they were enemies. 2 weeks passed. Julia, she was totally desperate, sobbing day and night and cursing herself because I did this to her. She came back and slapped him. Oh, I'm a fool, all because of my stupid pride. I should have snuggled, kissed him, told him how much I loved him, how much I missed him. What did I do now? Yeah, that it's over. It can't be. Ximena. He thought long and hard about how to correct his mistakes and decided to find out through acquaintances where Crespo lived and began to prepare to go. He lied to his daughter, of course. Julia, I'm going with Aunt Renata to the town of next to the hospital. He says that a very good doctor is coming, a professor. I would like to have a consultation with him. Maybe I can avoid surgery. I will show him all my tests. What are you, daughter? Like that with your condition? You are not going to get very far. You will get sick with every step. No, you stay at home. Rest. Take care of my granddaughter. But don't cry. It breaks my heart endlessly looking at you. The capital left the old woman stunned. With great difficulty she found the mansion, country of the Crespo family. After having spent their last savings on a taxi car, it was starting to get dark. There were dense forests around Jimenez. It was scary. How do you get home afterwards? There was no money left for the return trip. You had to walk 3 kilometers to a public transport stop. The woman knocked on the door. The dogs were barking in the yard. A guard came out of the booth and asked for Malacana. Who are you? Is this the right address? Jimena responded with more air. I would like to see Mr. Crespo or his son, Miguel. I have important business with them, a personal matter, please. The guard radioed the owner, Bibiano Crespo. There is an old woman who wants to see you. She says it is personal and important. She can go to the other side of the line. She said let her introduce herself, who she is. I don't know any of her woman, but she said I'm Jimena, mother of Julia Hernandez, Miguel's fiancée. Tell her I'm not going anywhere. I'll freeze here until tomorrow, but I won't leave until you talk to me. The guard told all this to the owner, who responded with a sigh. Very good. Take her to my office. Now under examination. She entered uncomfortably into the luxuriously furnished office. A large, helpless man with glasses was sitting at the desk. He made a gesture inviting her to sit down. Then he coughed and then asked, Lady, what brought you here? Who said that? I didn't understand the guard's word well. The woman answered, My name is Jimena. I'm Julia's mother. About 4 months ago, my daughter brought home a stray dog. She said it was her boyfriend. His name was Miguel, and she was going to live with him. Well, of course, I didn't take it very well. Julia is a homely girl. She has only had one man before, Antonio, and that was a year ago. She is a good girl. She is a nurse at our local hospital. Anyway, I digress. Of course, I was totally against the Julian-Miguel relationship. They had fallen deeply in love with all the consequences. Everything turned out well, and I took these hands and ruined everything good. It didn't give me any peace that my intelligent and beautiful daughter with a boat got confused. I myself had a hard life. I didn't want it. Same for my daughter. I made up stories out of spite, and now Miguel has doubts what to do. I don't know. We don't want anything from you. We can take care of the child ourselves. But I would like to apologize to his son and explain to him that what I said was a lie. Julia is not here, nor has I have never been with anyone. I pity two hearts and love that fight because of me. That's all. I also pity my grandson. He won't recognize his own father. Give my regards to Miguel, please, and if you could take me to the station. I have to go home, otherwise Julia no. She knows that I went to you. She will worry, and she can't. The man took off his glasses, turned them in his hands, and then answered, What news? So I'm going to be a grandfather soon. Miguel false. Now everything is more or less clear, and I thought it was so gloomy and depressed lately. Don't worry, I will talk to my son. The driver will take you directly home in a good car. It will only take an hour. Examine. She sighed with relief. Thank you for not kicking me out. Listen to me and understand me. It is evident that you are a calm and reasonable person, not like everyone else. We first make a mess and then we think with a light heart. Ximena drove home now. He had a clear conscience. He did everything possible to reconcile Miguel and Julia and atone for his sins. When Miguel arrived from work, he was so tired that his only thought was to lie down in bed and fall asleep, but his father was already waiting for him in the hallway. Miguel remembered the look that from his childhood. The eyebrows drawn back and the glasses on his forehead meant that something serious was about to happen. So it was. Viviano said to his son, Let's go to the study, son. We have to talk. Miguel sighed and followed him, wondering why he was going to be punished. As soon as the office door closed, his father began to speak sternly. What's wrong? Miguel, do you think my son is a scoundrel? And I don't know. Miguel opened his mouth at that turn of events. What are you doing, Dad? What have I done with the company? Okay, the agreements are good today. I checked it for half a day. What's wrong with you? The man got even tougher. Maybe you know a girl. Old woman's name is Jimena. A woman came today crying, begging for your forgiveness. She said that you got her daughter pregnant. What is that supposed to mean? Yes, it is true. Why are you hiding? What kind of man is that? He fell down immediately and frowned. I don't know what to do, Dad. You know Julia is good, kind. I love her very much. She helped me. She gave me shelter. And otherwise I would have died in the subway. But if she has a mother, she's a snake. She kept telling me that I wasn't right for her, and then she kicked me out. She said that Julia was with me for fun, but that she had a promised. So I was offended, and when last week I decided to approach Julia to do the phases, instead of being happy and hugging me in the face, she punched me. It's normal, and why? For a simple question of who is pregnant. Well, I have to be sure. You never know what my son is. The father shook his head. Oh, Miguel, you're a knucklehead. I would also like to punch you in the face. Now, how can you believe such nonsense and not check it thoroughly? You should have waited for Julia and talked to her. Of course. Second place, think. What would % of girls do if they knew you were the son of a millionaire? Yes, they would do everything possible. They would pretend to be perfect, just so he would be around. No, what did you do? Julia slapped you in the face and threw you out. She did. What does that tell you? That doesn't matter. Your money or your status does not matter. The truth is more important to her if she is not afraid to bring a homeless man home, defying her mother, and fall in love. Then it's real, you know, and you start to doubt her. Miguel is completely fallen. It's true. Why don't you know? It happened to me. I had already eaten. Everything eaten from the inside outside. I'm so in love with her and jealous, although I don't know who I'm jealous of. I feel so bad without her. She's like my own person since I met Julia. I don't want to look at anyone else. What do we do now? Dad is too proud. Probably not. Viviana will forgive me. She laughed. Idiot. Her mother said that your girlfriend cries day and night. She doesn't want to see anyone. She washes her tears and you say, she won't forgive. Speak to her from heart to heart. Sincerely, give her a hug. Offer her to be your wife. No woman would reject something like that you try to do. Deprive your father of his grandson. Inspired. Miguel bought a huge bouquet of pastel scarlet roses Caro that is so dreamy to treat Julia and hurried back to his house, timidly rang the doorbell. Julia's mother came out. It seemed very sick, and she was swaying slightly. The man greeted, good afternoon, ex Jimena. Julia is there? I have to talk to her. The woman suddenly cried, hello, Miguel. They took Julia to the hospital half an hour ago. They called an ambulance. Her stomach hurt, and she was bleeding. Ah. What a shame. God save us from an abortion. It's her nerves. She's been going crazy. I also wanted to go with her, but the doctor told me that my attention hasn't increased. I'm lying down. I'll go see her in the morning. I hope everything is fine. Never. I'll forgive myself. Miguel turned pale, and his face changed. You idiotic cretin. It's all your fault. Which hospital? Dictates the address quickly. The man flew at full speed without knowing the way. When he burst into the emergency room, the nurses were shocked. It's not every day he comes to see us. The son of Mr. Crespo himself. They often saw Miguel on banners and magazine covers and immediately recognized him. The man almost shouted, which room is Julia Hernandez? What's wrong with him? Where is the doctor on duty? Is my fiancé? The staff ran from one side to side trying to calm Miguel. An old and tired doctor came out of the waiting room and said sternly, what are you doing here? This is not a bazaar. By the way, Julia Hernandez in the room. The frankly critical situation is on the verge of collapse. It bleeds a lot. We do everything we can. You, the baby's father, can donate blood. It would help you a lot right now since blood loss is important. Miguel nodded his head. Yes, anything, as long as Julia and the baby are fine. I will pay for any medication, the most expensive. Please let me see you for a second. I have to tell you something. When you hear it, things will get better. I assure you. The doctor wanted to say no, but he looked into the man's eyes full of pain and desperation, and he changed his mind. Well, just a couple of minutes and I will be waiting. Miguel entered the room without making a sound. Jules lay scared and pale as a sheet and seemed almost not to breathe. The paramedics were busy around her administering the injections and a go of medication. The man approached her, knelt down and whispered, hello, my little girl. Forgive me. I have been a fool. I love you much more than life. Don't say anything. Take care of your strength and our baby. Let me put my hand on your belly. I can gently put his hand on her belly. He caressed it sweetly and whispered, my son, am I your dad? No. Be picky. Your mother and I love you, and we are waiting for you. We need you on time, strong and healthy. A nurse approached the door and made a gesture for them to leave. Miguel gently kissed Julia and came out, and something unimaginable was happening in his soul ago. For an hour he wanted to just die, and in general he didn't care what would happen next, and now everything inside him was filled with warmth, happiness, and an incredible light. He wanted to live so much love. Miguel raised his son. Finally, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. Knowing with certainty that now everything would be fine, she was not alone. Miguel was with her. Miguel donated blood. The poor man spent the whole night sitting on the sofa in the hall without missing a beat and praying. How could I, Lord, take all the money from me, the company, the cars? Let me Julia and the baby recover. I'd rather be sick than for something to happen to them. I love them. In the morning, the same tired doctor touched him on the shoulder. He had already changed his clothes and was on his way home, looking at the poor man. He felt very sorry for him and decided to encourage him. Miguel, your girlfriend is fine. The bleeding has stopped. The threat of abortion has been treated, but she will have to stay with us for 1 or 2 more weeks so that we can monitor her for the future. Be careful. Do not allow stress, nervous overload. Take care of her. Women are especially vulnerable. In this position, if you want you can pay for a private room with television. Miguel Felix shook the doctor's hand and thanked him. Thank God everything went well. If something had happened to Julia or the baby, I wouldn't have had it. Forgiven, I can never see her now, the doctor responded sternly. The visiting hours are posted in the waiting room. No breaking the schedule. These rules are written for everyone. It is clear. Miguel arranged everything and Julia was moved to a separate comfortable room with television. Not yet she could get up. So the man tried to spend every free minute with her. He gave her massages. He caressed her belly and filled her with fruit, smoke, and vitamins. Her mother also brought homemade soups and vegetables. Steamed. Julia couldn't get enough. Mom, Miguel, they will feed me so much I will be as chubby as Winnie the Pooh, especially because the toxicosis has disappeared. I have the appetite of a wolf, eating like crazy. After Miguel was discharged from the hospital despite Julia's protests, he moved her to his mansion, and he and his father took care of Jimena's health. They sent her to his sanatorium to receive treatment, paying for a month's stay. The woman was happy. In fact, she had never been on vacation so much in her entire life. When she had vacations in the country work, she was immediately looking for a part-time job, and so year after year. And she had never had enough money to go to the spas. The resort was located on the seashore. The scenery was magnificent. The staff treated her like a queen. She was an important guest. The woman was walking. She took pictures of herself a lot against the mountains and the beach, and sent photos to her friends. They were jealous. The whole building was talking about it. Look, how lucky Jimena is in her old age. She is spending a real vacation and receiving free treatment. All thanks to Julia. They used to scold her and tell her she was stupid. She got involved with a homeless man, but the bum, he wasn't a homeless man like in the fairy tale. Julia went on maternity leave to work, and on her last day she decided to have a farewell dinner at the hospital. Brought cake, fruit, and champagne for her colleagues. Nobody made fun of her anymore. No gossip, but everyone flattered her and tried to please her. Outside the city, Julia felt great. Fresh air of the forest, walks along shady paths, rest in a senator. She slept soundly and recovered a little. She was prettier. Her cheeks turned pink. Her belly grew by the minute and looked like a big watermelon. Miguel carried his beloved like a glass vase. He was so happy he had made an appointment with the best clinic for childbirth. The threat of a nervous breakdown would not happen again. Viviana also did not waste time ordering new furniture and equipment for a beautiful baby room. He kept everything a secret from the young people. He didn't teach them anything. He was afraid of bad luck. Ximena recovered very well, and when he went to the clinic, the doctors were amazed. All his vital signs had improved a lot. The doctor was amazed. Eximir Hernandez, now you can go to the Olympics. What was the name of the sanatorium? I would recommend it to all my patients. When Julia went for the last ultrasound before giving birth along with her lover, they had another scare. Dr. Ramon Reyes started the conversation with a sly smile. Julia, I see that things are going well in your personal life. Is your husband? You look good. The woman looked at him. Yes, it is Miguel, my baby's father. We are going well. Ramon Reyes continued. Then I have incredible news for you, young man. You have to sit down just in case. A scared Miguel started babbling. Something's wrong with the baby. Talk. Don't drag it out. Who is twins? A boy and a girl. Congratulations. Julia opened her mouth. How are the twins? They did ultrasounds during my pregnancy, and they didn't tell me anything. Of twins? Why did Ramon Reyes continue? I have seen it all. I didn't want to scare you until it was too late. If I had told you, you wouldn't have agreed not to terminate the pregnancy. You were scared and crying all the time, right? Miguel jumped for joy. 2 children at the same time. Well, it will make us boring. Julia responds, surprised. That's how it is and everything, and I wonder why my little boy is so fussy, and his belly is already like 2 watermelons, and it turns out that there are 2. Will I be able to handle them by myself? Do I have to have an operation? The gynecologist will laugh. Here we go. The usual fears of women, of course. You will give birth on your own. All your indicators are normal. Your pelvis is wide. We can do it. Don't worry. We just have to go to the hospital a week before, since in the case of twins, births are usually premature and sudden. Everyone at home was shocked. Ximena crossed herself and thought to herself, God, thank goodness Julio and Miguel are reconciled. I can't imagine how she and I would have raised 2 children together. A happy Julia snuggled together to Miguel, and he answered dreamily, you see, when I saw you for the first time at the crossroads, for some reason, I thought this is my destiny, and he was not wrong. He kissed Julia and answered, I have thought about it many times too. If I had not fought with my father, and he had stuck on the subway, we probably would have never met. Whatever the circumstances, We must always sit down and talk. We still have a lot to learn since our family has just been formed, but we have a lifetime to do it. Julia was barely getting over her pregnancy. In the end, she could no longer see anything beyond her nose behind her. Her huge belly. When they took Julia to the hospital, Miguel couldn't find any space as he ran down the hallway wringing his hands, and worried Ximena was also praying, looking at her huge belly. Viviana couldn't understand how women could give birth, and when two were born at the same time. Fortunately, everything went perfectly. Julia insisted that only Ramon Reyes would attend the birth. She trusted him 100%. I knew he wouldn't do anything wrong. When they handed her two squeaky babies soaked and bound, she even cried with joy. The emotions were so strong at that moment. Julia felt like the happiest woman on the planet. Ramon Reyes leaned towards her and said his words. Remember what I promised you, that when you became a mother, you would be so happy that all other problems and remains will become so small and unimportant. Then I am right. Julia smiled happily. You are percent right. Thank you, Ramon Reyes, for everything. You are more than a doctor. You have become like a father to me during this time. Thank you very much. There were so many people at the baptism of Martina and Martín, press journalists, invited Viviano Crespo, and all our acquaintances. The party was for everyone. Everyone admired the little angels who smiled peacefully in their crib and wished happiness and good luck to the happy family. If you like the story,